All right, so I have a couple of articles for you and the Project 2025 tracker. So, um, so we have two good news articles and the Project 2025 tracker. So let's start with Republicans cut a library's funding over LGBTQ plus books. Then the community did something surprising. And for those who don't get what's good news about it, it's the second part. All right, conservatives wanted to enforce an LGBTQ plus book ban at a local library, but local readers weren't having it. All right. The Alabama Public Library Service voted to pause $40,000 in funding to the Fairhope Public Library after the anti-LGBTQ plus activist groups Clean Up Alabama and Moms for Liberty complained that the library had failed to abide by recent LGBTQ plus book bans. However, a fundraiser quickly replaced the funding and then some. The APLS recently introduced a new rule for categorizing books in a three-tiered system for adults, teens, and children, following complaints about LGBTQ plus themes in books. The aforementioned activist groups argued that LGBTQ plus books should be classified as adults, and later complained that Fairhope Public Library failed to abide by these rules. Right, because a bunch of adults, can't handle the fact that not everyone is cis and straight. They've decided that children can't handle it, especially the children who, are part of the LGBT plus community. Because we only care about children when it suits us, I guess. Anyway, Fairhope Library officials said that they had a recent letter from an APLS board member, and John Wall, chair of the state Republican committee, confirmed that the library had confirmed with the APLS tier system. However, Wall and the board ultimately took the side of the conservative groups, voting to pause funding to the library pending further review and investigation. Okay, our goal is not to punish anyone, but to ensure that all libraries receiving state funding adhere to the established standards that protect our children, Wall said in an email sent to AL.com. No, your goal is to pretend that LGBT plus people don't exist. And you want those children who happen to be LGBT plus or have friends or family who are LGBT plus to basically erase any knowledge of them so they can feel like their families are just weird and unnatural or whatever stupid shit people claim that LGBT plus people are. Because apparently they think their lives are the gold standard of humanity. Fairhope, Alabama is known for being a hub of writers and artists in the South, making the APLS's decision on Monday a topic of outrage among local residents that has generated national attention. I don't like the fact that anyone can go to Montgomery and make some comments and cause a pause in funding without further investigation, Fairhope City Councilman Jack Burrell said. It's like I keep saying. If you're going to try to ban a book, you should be forced to read the book and do an extensive book report on it to show that you understand what the book is about. Because 9 times out of 10, the people who are whining about books never read the damn thing, just maybe heard a rumor, maybe heard a line out of context if it was even, stated correctly, and make a decision based on that. As opposed to, I don't know, actually reading the material for themselves to find out if it's really that bad. Passionate about free speech, the local anti-censorship activist organization Read Freely, Alabama, created a fundraiser to cover the loss in funding. Months of targeted attacks, stacking the APLS board, and conspiring with Alabama Republican Party Chair John Wall finally paid off for Moms for Liberty and Clean Up Alabama, the fundraiser page read. Under Chairman Wall's leadership, state funding has been stripped from the Fairhope Library for shelving age-appropriate sex education materials in the young adult section. As of today, the fundraiser has surpassed its $40,000 goal, reaching over $46,000 by Monday afternoon. Because there are people who actually genuinely care about free speech, as opposed to those who whine about free speech only when they're affected. Because people don't like what they have to say, so then they have to whine about free speech. This is actually defending free speech, because they are actually preventing the government from telling people what they can and cannot read. Librarians, specifically children's librarians, understand what is age appropriate. I used to work in a library. What do? We read book reviews. And that's in the adult section. We read book reviews to decide what books because I worked in a public library, in the adult section, what books our patrons have asked for, books that we think that people in the population that we are serving would be interested in. The same thing happens with children's librarians. Not only do they have just a list of books and a book reviews, but it also tells you the age level, the reading level, the age level, whatever. It comes with that. So experts already know what is age appropriate, and they shelve it accordingly. Just because you think a certain group of people are icky doesn't mean that it isn't age appropriate. It just means that you need to take the thistle out of your ass. And I've mentioned this before. We actually had on our bookshelf in the adult section the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. I mean, ew. I'm sure we had I'm not sure if we had Mein Kampf or not. But the point is, we had what would be considered hate speech. Well, actually, the Protocols of Elders of Zion definitely hate speech, anti-Semitic up the yin-yang. But we had it. Why? Because it is still literature, and people are interested in such ideas, whether it be to mock them or just to find out what the hubbub is all about. But we don't decide, this is hate speech, we're taking it off. Because we're dealing with adults. They can decide for themselves. So yeah, we had horrible material on the shelves, but nobody actually asked us to take it out, because again, we're talking about adults. Same thing with children. It is only theirs are age appropriate. There are experts who decide what ideas, what language is age appropriate for 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 students in general. Now, if you as a parent decide that a certain subject is not your child is not yet ready to read, or it has situations that your child isn't ready for, or tried to read it and it ended badly, that they just couldn't handle it, fine. I mean, not all children um not all children's reading level advances at the same pace. Not all children are ready for certain topics. Actually, this is proof that there are adults who aren't ready for certain topics. So, absolutely, if your child wants to check out a book and you do not feel that it is appropriate for them, you have every right as a parent to veto it. You have every right to do that. You do not have the right to tell other parents what should be appropriate for their children, because not all children are the same, and not all parents are hard asses about certain topics. Because I'm sure there are parents out there who it's not so much that they don't think it's appropriate because they don't think their children can handle it, but it's that they can't. And they don't want their children to learn about it because I guess they're afraid they'll turn gay or something. Anyway, in related news, the APLS board also voted to fire APLS director Nancy Pack, who had been vocal about keeping books available to all readers, like a good librarian should. Pack had previously submitted her letter of resignation effective September of this year. Upon learning of her resignation, Republican board member Amy Minton immediately introduced a motion to terminate Pack's employment. "This is not personal," Minton said at the meeting. Wanna bet? "I want to thank Dr. Pack for her service to the APLS organization. I appreciate that she recognizes the need for her resignation. However, I believe that APLS needs new leadership and direction." Translation: we wanted someone who heads the library who will do what they say, who will censor books the way they want them censored. The board approved the motion to fire Pack and denied her additional time to collect her belongings, telling her she would have to collect and remove her items immediately. That is cold. I mean, how much more do you want to scream, "Oh, goody, goody, get the hell out of here. We don't want you here," because you are interfering with our ability to force kids to only read the stuff we want them to read. I mean, give me a break. After this thing at the board meeting today, and after all the things they wanted to do, it just pointed out how much I do not want to work for this board and support their ideology of what public libraries in Alabama should be, Pack said to reporters from the Alabama Reflector. I mean, I don't blame her. Who wants to work for an organization where you're basically constantly fighting an uphill battle just so your readers can, read what they want, as opposed to being told by the powers that be that they can't read it for whatever reason, because the board finds it icky because they're a bunch of prudes. So, or even better, that they don't want anyone to know that the LGBTQ community exists. So, the best way to do that is to make sure that they don't have access to materials that mention them. Anyway, that is the end of that article. So, but it's nice to see that the majority of the community do not reflect these goobers. So, all I can say is that I don't know when the next election is for their school board, but which is odd because they're talking about the school board, but it's a public library system. What does the school board have to do with the public library? They should have absolutely nothing to say. Even if the schools themselves do not have a school library, they still are not in charge of a public library. So the library board, that is, at least the nonprofit boards I'm aware of, that is something people have to express an interest in. And they do apply, and the people on the board look at the applications and pick which ones they want. But since this board is already, so I assume that the public library board, if they're mostly Republicans, they're going to only want people who think like them, considering they have no problem getting rid of this woman who actually cares about true freedom of speech. But anyway, but with school boards, those people get elected. So next election, it sounds like these school board members are going to be shown the door. They're going to be drop kicked because, yeah, apparently most people don't agree with this. So anyway, before I get to the next article, let's go over the latest in Project 2025. So, it's 44% complete. So, we're just falling deeper and deeper into hell. So, 109 objectives are complete. 44 are in progress. So, they've completed the objectives for the U.S. Agency for Global Media, along with USAID, which I mentioned before. Let's check out the objectives that they took care of. Dismantle USAGM's journalism firewall to align its reporting with the aims of the president. So the note says journalists are facing HR investigations for comments critical of Trump. VOA journalist was put on leave because that's not chilling at all. Yeah, nothing says free speech. I mean, let's face it, his co-president is Elon Musk, and Elon is always talking about freedom of speech, freedom of speech. I'm a freedom of speech absolutist. Nothing says freedom of speech like making sure that that the Voice of America only says things that Trump wants them to say. All right. They stopped funding of the Open Technology Fund, and that was accomplished by eliminating USAGM. So, and they cut the budget, which essentially eliminates the organization. Because, again, they don't want soft power. They don't want people to hear the truth about what's happening in the U.S. Because this was made to combat misinformation. Because there are countries that will give nonsense propaganda about what is happening in the world. And specifically in the U.S., but in the world. And so this was a form of telling people, giving them good information about what's happening in the U.S., in the rest of the world, instead of them being forced to listen to this propaganda bullshit that the government is putting out. And so now we're doing the same damn thing. Great. All right. So another new objective that has been completed is from the USDA, the Department of Agriculture. They restrict the Low-Income Heat and Energy Assistance Program. And by doing that, how did they do that? They fired the entire staff. So nothing says they care about poor people and making sure they can pay their heating bills, so they don't freeze to death. Or in the summer so they don't cook, is by completely eliminating that program and firing all the staff. Right. Nothing says we care about poor people and making sure they survive severe weather, whether it be, like I said, severe cold or severe heat, without, and unable to pay their bills so they could pay in installments. Yeah, let's just get rid of that because, either you are able to pay or you suffer. Anyway, oh yes, and they also weakened federal employee unions, which should come as no surprise that two people, Trump and Musk, who have a history of not wanting to pay their employees. I mean, Musk said he doesn't want to pay overtime, and he doesn't, and he is a union buster. He doesn't like unions, and Trump is notorious for not even paying his employees for legitimate work they do on the clock rather than overtime. And by legitimate work, I mean, your typical job, as opposed to being forced to stay overtime. He doesn't even want to pay them then. So, not surprising that he would be anti-union. He actually, when he was campaigning, he went to a factory, I think it was in Detroit, that was non-union. And it wasn't just simply because the union was anti-Trump. I have no idea what happened to Sean Fain. I think he was hit in the head. But anyway. So, and the note even says here, Trump signed an executive order stripping collective bargaining rights from federal workers in 18 departments, which, no surprise that he and Musk endorsed Brad Schimmel in the Wisconsin Supreme Court race because, he was Scott Walker's attorney general. He along with Walker brought up Act 10 that destroyed collective bargaining in Wisconsin, and teachers have hated them since. So, yeah, not surprising whatsoever. Anyway, that is all I have of that. Let me just refresh to make sure nothing... Oh! It changed back down to 108 done and 45 in progress. But we are so at 43% done. So someone done goofed, but it still sucks. Oh, I see. So that program, that heating program, that was just taken off the board. Not sure why, but that was taken off the board. But I'm sure that's being worked on because it went down to 108 done, but at 45 in progress. So it just is a matter of time before that program goes under. Anyway, So that is all I have for the Project 2025 tracker. Now, here is one that actually I'm happy to hear about because, as you guys know, I'm not afraid to swear. One of the reasons why I'm, not expecting to ever get to the point of being monetized, or even if I do get to the point actually being monetized, simply because I swear a lot. Anyway, so this article from Time Magazine, The Surprising Health Benefits of Swearing. All right. Many of us try to suppress the urge to blurt out an expletive when something goes wrong. Definitely many, maybe many, but definitely not all. But the instinct may actually be useful. Research had found that using profanity can have beneficial effects on people's stress, anxiety, and depression. In fact, there are numerous potential physical, psychological, and social perks related to the power of a well-timed F-bomb. Here are the hidden health perks of swearing that science has uncovered. It can help you tolerate pain. Cursing induces what's called hypoalgesia, or decreased sensitivity to pain. Researchers have shown that after uttering a curse word, people can keep their hands submerged in ice water for longer than if they say a more neutral word. Swearing is a readily accessible, low-cost means of self-help, says Richard Stevens, a senior lecturer in psychology at Keele University in the UK and author of the book Black Sheep, The Hidden Benefits of Being Bad. But here's an interesting twist. People who swear less often get more benefit from swearing when they need it. He says, in other words, cursing all the time zaps the words of their potency. Which makes sense. I mean, it's certainly when I hear too many fucks or any other swear words. Actually, that's one of the reasons why I stopped watching I'm blanking on the show's name. Anyway, too much swearing. I mean, if you took each character, maybe it wouldn't be so bad, but the fact that each character did quite a few F-bombs, it just was just too much. It's okay if I hear it on occasion. It's entirely another when people are swearing just to swear. I never saw the point in swearing just to swear. It sort of screams like, oh, look what I can do. I can swear, so I'm going to overdo it. So, yeah. Yeah, definitely like Pete Buttigieg. The whole Signal scandal caused him to swear. He tweeted an F-bomb. He, I think, swore on an interview with Jim Costa. I can't remember which word he used. But you know that he how pissed off he was about this whole thing because he swore. Because you never hear Pete swear. I mean, the man was in the Navy, so I'm pretty sure he's heard plenty of swearing and did plenty of swearing as well. But you did not hear it. So it surprised you, and it really hit home just how fucked up the Signal scandal was. So yeah, definitely less is more when it comes to swearing, and I think I've gotten a lot better. I used to swear more than I do now. Okay, you'll work out harder. Swearing aloud is associated with improvements in exercise performance, including cycling power and hand grip strength. A study in a 2022 issue of the Quarterly Journal of Experimental Psychology even found that when people repeated a swear word while doing chair push-ups, they reported feeling more self-confidence. Okay. Swearing seems to help people shed their social inhibitions, according to Stevens, one of the study's authors. When we're disinhibited, we're no longer as worried about negative social evaluation, which in turn leads to greater confidence, he explains. Okay, that's fair. It can help you regulate emotions. A study in the European Journal of Social Psychology found that when people wrote about a time they felt socially excluded, they repeated a swear word for 2 minutes. Their hurt feelings and social distress were significantly lower than for people who used a neutral word. Huh? In another study, researchers found that when drivers cursed after being refused the right of way by another driver, or when they encountered a traffic jam caused by cars that were stopped illegally, cursing helped them tamp down their anger and return to a more balanced emotional state. Swearing allows us to vent and cope with emotions such as anger and frustration, says Timothy J., a professor of psychology emeritus at the Massachusetts College of Liberal Arts and author of the books Why We Curse and Cursing in America. It can make people feel closer. I think of swear words as being like a box of tools, Jay says. We can use them in different ways in different situations for personal or social gain. There appears to be a surprising social benefits associated with well-timed use of profanity. Some people believe that profanity can break social taboos in a generally non-harmful way, which can create an informal environment in which people feel like insiders together, said Ben Bergen, a professor of cognitive science at the University of California, San Diego, and author of the book What the F? What Swearing Reveals About Language, Our Brains, and Ourselves. Similarly, swearing can lead others to believe that the person speaking is honest because they're saying what they really believe. As evidence, consider this. A series of studies published in the Journal of Social, Psychological, and Personality Science. Oh, come on. What the heck? All right, where was I? As evidence, consider this. A series of studies published in the Journal of Social, Psychological, and Personality Science found a positive relationship between the use of profanity and honesty, based on how and when people cursed in their everyday lives. The researchers concluded that profanity was associated with less lying and deception, and a greater sense of integrity. In another series of studies in this journal, Psychology, Crime, and Law, researchers found that the use of swear words in fictitious legal testimony made the testimony seem more credible to participants than when the same testimony was free of profanity. In the right context, swearing has been found to bolster social connections. In a study involving workers in a soap factory in New Zealand, researchers recorded their daily interactions and concluded that when the F word was used on the factory floor to express a complaint or objection, it seemed to engender more communal feelings among workers. Of course, it is possible to overdo it. People who swear frequently are sometimes perceived as angry, hostile, or aggressive, so there's a potential tipping point to using profanity. It's also important to know your audience. Observing how others use language is usually a good first step in a new environment, Bergen says. It's not just whether people use profanity or not. It's how they're using it and what specific words or kind of words they're using. Is this the kind of situation where mild swears seem generally used? Do people seem to react positively to people using language that way? Is everyone using profanity or just particular people? Swearing etiquette may depend on the social hierarchy and power dynamics in certain situations, such as the workplace, says Jay. Just because the boss uses curse words doesn't necessarily mean you can get away with it. You'll also want to modify your language around young children. Being attentive to nuances in how curse words are used in different settings can guide you toward a more productive relationship with profanity. And I would actually say modifying your language around young children, again, that is specific to a situation. Because my mom taught me how to swear when I was in elementary school. Because she knew that I was going to hear swear words, and she wanted to be sure that I knew how to use it properly. Actually, even my nephew, when he was little, elementary school age, I can't remember how old, maybe 6, 7, maybe even younger, I can't remember. He wanted to, he was testing boundaries with me because his father, who, again, my mom taught us how to swear when we were in elementary school. And now this man completely lost his mind when he had kids and didn't want anybody to swear in front of them. His wife, on the other hand, thought my brother was absolutely insane because they're going to hear swear words anyway. Why are we modifying our language? But anyway, we respected my brother's rules. And so one of my nephews said something and said, "God damn it." And I just looked at him and I said, I do not care that you said "God damn it." However, you need to use it properly. And that was not the proper use. Because, let's face it, kids learn how to swear. They hear it. I mean, you might want to protect them from such language, but they're going to hear it. They're going to repeat it. So why not make sure that they know what the words mean? So they either use it properly or they'll know when somebody is improperly using it and they shouldn't mimic what they're saying. So even modifying your language around young children is still not a catch-all. Okay, and it looks like that is the end of that article. That is rather abrupt ending. But anyway, that is the end of that article. So, I believe that is all I have for this video. And with that, I will see you guys in the next one.